Hello and welcome back to Sustainable Teacher. If this is your first time here, my name is Leticia and I'm glad to meet you. And if you've been here before, I'm happy to see you again. In today's video, we will talk about health and illnesses. So if you are interested in this video, please subscribe, hit the notification bell, and if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. So the first thing we have to define is health. Health is a state of our body, but not only our body, it's also of our mind. So it's a physical and mental well-being. And it's not only physically like our body and mental, our mind, it's also social. Nowadays, when we talk about having a healthy life, we should include our body, our mind, and our social life, our social relationships, because we as humans, we are social animals, so it's important for us to socialize. And the opposite is illness. When we suffer an illness, what happens is that there is a condition which is lacking in our body. We have altered our health, so something is not working properly. It could be something temporary, or it could be permanent and chronic. It will depend on the illness. And what can make us to get sick, to get a disease? Sometimes it's just environmental factors. Maybe it's cold, and we are more likely to get flu, for instance. Sometimes when it's not an infectious disease, could be maybe we are doing exercise and we can injure ourselves, so maybe this depends on the lifestyle. And sometimes it's something that we have inherited from our relatives, so it could be genetic. In any case, when we have an illness, usually we have some symptoms. Symptoms are those physical changes or mental changes that we will see, that we will discover, that will make us think that something bad is happening. Maybe it's fever, maybe it's a sore throat, maybe it's a stomach ache, maybe it's that you are feeling sad or whatever. So these are the symptoms. Then you will go to a doctor, and with all these symptoms are all the medical trials. You will have a diagnosis, and after the diagnosis you can get a treatment. Hopefully you have a treatment for this. At least, if not a treatment to cure the illness, a treatment to release the symptoms. And finally, of course, everything will be recorded in your medical record for the future. I've said this before, but you know that we have two types of illnesses. Well, depending on how we classify, but in this classification we have two types: infectious or non-infectious. If we are talking about non-infectious diseases, it's something that we cause ourselves. The origin is not external, okay? It's not like the coronavirus. So it's not caused by a pathogen, like a bacteria or a virus or a fungi, whatever. What can be the origin then? It could be something toxicological. I ate something that it was in a bad state, so it makes my stomach hurt. It could be genetic, like sometimes high cholesterol or diabetes. And it could be increase these illnesses if we don't have good eating habits, okay? Nutritional, as I just said, maybe it's allergic, so I am allergic to peanuts, and if I eat peanuts I will have an allergic reaction and could be very severe. Or it could be something autoimmune, like Crohn's disease, or due to a trauma. Maybe you have suffered a war and then you have post-traumatic condition, stress, post-traumatic stress, okay? Or it could be degenerative, like Alzheimer's disease. It could be endocrine, like diabetes, or metabolic, okay? So different examples, but never a pathogen will cause this disease. It's always something we have or something we cause. If we talk about the infectious diseases, which is the opposite, there will be always a pathogen involved in this disease. Which are the typical pathogen that we will find? Bacteria. For instance, many pneumonia are caused by bacteria. Viruses, of course, our friend coronavirus. Fungi, maybe sometimes we have like skin diseases due to fungi. And protozoans. Protozoans, I'm gonna give you the example of malaria, okay, and it will cause the death of the red blood cells. In the case of the infectious diseases in which there is a pathogen that should be transmitted, there are different types of transmissions. It could be direct, maybe if I touch the person, or it could be by the air, or if I drink or eat something contaminated. The thing is, and sometimes we have some transmission vectors, like some insects, in the case of malaria, by the way. And how can they enter into our body? They could enter by the skin, so cutaneously. They could enter through our nose or mouth, so it's through the respiratory tract. It could enter through when we eat them, so the digestive tract, or sometimes is related with infections in the urinary system, in the bladder typically, so it's the genitourinary tract. How is infectious disease developed? So first, the pathogen will get inside us by any mean we said before, and there will be a period of incubation. We don't feel as sick, we don't have symptoms yet, but the pathogen is growing in our body. Once it is we have enough quantity of pathogens inside, our body will realize, and we will have the development period of the development of the sickness of the illness, okay? We will have all these symptoms like aches, fever, whatever, and if we get treated, diagnosed and treated, or sometimes they go alone, okay? But if we are treated, after that we will have a recovery period in which our body will fight against the illness and recover all the health conditions that we had before the sickness. In all this recovery situation and expressing symptoms, the immune system is very related, because this is our defensive system. We have different types of defensive mechanisms that will help us cope to first not get infected, and if we get infected, to fight the sickness, the illness, okay? We have two main ways of working in the immune system, which is non-specific immunity and the specific immunity. In the case of the non-specific immunity, they are usually typically physical barriers, external barriers, and the initial recognition, okay? So maybe if it is something that would enter through our nose, we have some hairs inside the nose and all the mucus that will help us expelling the pathogen before entering in our body. If we eat them in our stomach when we do the digestion, the conditions are very acid, so it's another way to kill pathogens or avoid pathogens to enter in an unspecific way, okay? And sometimes, and also we have some cells inside that are not specialized in a specific pathogen. They are just recognizing strange things inside our body. When something is recognized as strange, we will develop what is called the inflammatory response. So in this local point, we will have an inflammation with fever and inflammation. We will feel the inflammation is gonna be a bit painful, but the thing is to signal to the objective of this inflammatory response is to signal that something strange is there, okay? But if we have met this pathogen before, if we have been sick with this illness before, we have the ability, our immune system has the ability to memorize what this type of pathogen and to perform a specific response to the pathogen. So this is the specific immunity. And who is in charge of this immunity? The white blood cells or lymphocytes. So they are specific cells with a lot of proteins and glucoproteins on the outside their cell membrane, and they can interact with the proteins and glucoproteins of the pathogen membranes. When they check that is that pathogen that they remember, they will perform directly a very high immune response to kill the pathogen and avoid them to make us sick. So in general, healthy habits like doing exercise, eating properly, having hygiene like washing our hands before cooking or eating, after going to the bathroom, of course, having showers, washing our clothes, washing the fruits and vegetables before eating them, cooking things properly, etc. will storing food properly will help us to prevent to get sick through pathogens, okay? And another system is vaccines. Vaccinating is a way to present our immune system the pathogen without having the illness, without suffering it. But our immune system will memorize the antibodies, will memorize the pathogen. So in the future, if we get infected with this, they will fight the pathogen before causing us to be sick, okay? And then we have also treatments in case we are already sick. They can prevent to get worse, like maybe if we get some surgery, we can have antibiotics to avoid getting infections later. But in some other cases is we take the antibiotic after the infection. So which type of treatments can we have? In the case of infectious diseases like viruses, we can use antiserums. Serums are extracted from previous people that were infected with that illness, with that virus, and they have in their blood the immunity, so they can transfer to other people. Okay. Antibiotics, they kill bacteria, fungi or protozoans, never viruses. Viruses are not sensitive to antibiotics, okay? And then for the viruses, we have also the antivirals. Usually the antiviral drugs, the antiviral medicines, what they do is to avoid viruses to reproduce inside our body. If they can't reproduce, they can't cause the illness. And sometimes when there is not a cure, at least we can treat symptoms with symptomatic medicines. For instance, if we have fever, we can have paracetamol. If we have something inflamed, we can have ibuprofen, okay? And I haven't talked yet about what happens when we have an organ inside our body that doesn't work properly. In this case, if we can't repair the organ, the only way to get cured, to get better, is to have a transplant from a donor, okay? So maybe we can have a transplant of a kidney, heart, lung, liver, whatever. The thing is that to make this possible, we have to be compatible with the donor. So, and that means that inside our immune system there should be some genes that should be the same, and this is really difficult. Usually donors are only relatives, like near relatives like our father, mother, parents, our siblings. And sometimes it could be really random. We can find a random donor, but this is not the more common thing. So it's really complicated to find a donor. We can also donate blood and medulla also, okay? Not only organs, I forgot. And which type of transplant can we find? We can find 3 types. Autologous, when we can transplant from our body. Imagine that we have had an accident and we don't have skin in our face. We can take a piece of skin from our leg and transplant it to our face. This is an autologous transplant. The typical transplant is when we get from one person one organ and you put this in another body. So this is an allotransplant, from one person to another person. And in very weird cases, it usually doesn't work, and it was something that it was performed in the past, not too much. Nowadays we have xenotransplants, which is from another animal, like a pig, for instance, but usually they don't work, okay? But they exist. So in the autologous transplant we don't have any problem because it comes from our own cells. The biggest problem is the rejection, because the immune system feels that new organ as something strange, so they reject them, performing an autoimmune and inflammatory response, and they will kill even you trying to reject that organ. So usually what they do when you have a transplant is to depress your immune system, to make them to be a little bit asleep, so they don't detect too much while your body recovers with this new organ. And there is a new way of making things, or trying to cure people with organs that are not working properly, which are stem cells. Stem cells are like these embryonic cells from one that are not differentiated. When we are embryos, all our cells are together, and they will get differentiated depending on the part of the body they are. So if we are able to get embryonic cells, stem cells from our own body, we can regenerate those organs. Theoretically, this is really difficult, okay? We can regenerate the organs using our own undifferentiated cells. But nowadays this is only theory, not really practical, okay? And just to finish, a little bit about first aid. So when we see a person that is having an accident on an emergency and we help them immediately, this is called first aid. It could be someone that is unconscious, that had a heart attack, that is something obturating their throat, or someone with epilepsy, whatever. The thing is that you should always remember these 3 letters, PAR, which is protect, alert, and rescue. What does it mean? If you find someone having a heart attack, the first thing is put them in the floor in the lateral position with something on the head so they can't hit their head or whatever. And before doing anything else, call the 112, so the emergency call alert system, okay? And they will help you to assist that person in the first moment while they can come if it is really severe, or they will give you instructions to help them if it's not that severe, okay? So you can help them later. Of course, we have the CPR, which is the cardiopulmonary resuscitation. You have to do some pushes like this with some rhythm. And of course, usually in any house, school, work, or wherever, we have those first aid kits with the basic things to cure someone, like serum, like parts, like something to disinfect, etc. And this is the end of the video. If you have any doubt, please leave it in the comments, and of course, see you soon!